You might think this video is about death. In fact, it's about something far more interesting, the life you are living now, in its exact, flawed, and edited, ordinary state. With its forgotten Mondays, repeated lies, faded dreams, and suffocating routines, is the exact life you're condemned to live again. Not once, not twice, but an infinite number of times. Every heartbeat, every failure, every disappointment, every act of cowardice, every sin of omission and of silence, lived again in sequence, precisely as it unfolded the first time, without the slightest variation, without the possibility of redemption, without even the mercy of forgetting. There will be no judge to condemn you, no deity to forgive you, no force to intervene, only you. You and the weight of your own existence looping forever in a closed circle of repetition. You, sentenced to re-experience every second, every hesitation, every fear you refused to face, every word you swallowed, every truth you avoided, every time you choose to drift instead of decide. This is not the afterlife imagined by religion. There is no fire licking at your feet, no demons shrieking in the distance, no gnashing of teeth beneath an iron sky. There is no courtroom, no scale of justice, no final verdict spoken by a holy mouth. The punishment, if it can even be called that, is far worse. It is subtle, quiet, invisible, and unrelenting. It is your own life, repeated endlessly. A closed loop in time, a cosmic recurrence of everything you are, everything you have done, and everything you failed to become. Friedrich Nietzsche did not offer this idea as prophecy. He offered it as a test, a mirror, a curse. The eternal return is not a belief. It is a confrontation, an idea that walks silently into your soul and asks a single, devastating question. Would you be willing to live this life again? Would you choose to repeat it, exactly as it has unfolded so far, in every moment and every detail, knowing that nothing would ever change, that every regret would remain, every shame would resurface, and every unspoken word would echo across the centuries? If you hesitate to say yes, then Nietzsche has already diagnosed you. You are already standing at the gates of hell, not because of what you did, but because of what you are, and your refusal to face it. Because this is a hell made not of fire, but of memory, not of punishment, but of repetition. He imagined a demon, not the kind that howls or roars, but the kind that whispers. A demon that visits you in your loneliest hour and speaks in your ear a sentence that is not shouted, but breathed, soft, slow, eternal. This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live again and innumerable times more. There will be nothing new in it. Every pain, every joy, every thought, and every sigh must return to you in the same succession and sequence. Would you curse the demon for telling you this, or would you bow in awe and say, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? That is the weight of the eternal return. It is not concerned with theology or salvation or final judgment. It is a philosophical X-ray, a light that reveals the bones of your being. It forces you to see your life not as a story moving forward, but as a cycle folding in upon itself. And once you see that cycle, once you feel its gravitational pull, you can no longer live as if your choices are temporary. Every decision becomes eternal. Every action becomes immortal. And this, Nietzsche believed, is the most terrifying burden the human mind can bear. The idea that nothing is lost, that everything returns, that your life is not a line, but a wheel without exit, a wheel whose only content is your own being, spinning in silence, without end. There is no hero in this story, no redemption arc, No cathartic finale where the music swells and the light pours down. There's only this. You, sitting in a room, hearing these words, breathing this breath, and doing so again. And again. And again. Would you call this heaven? Or would you weep? Would you rejoice in the familiarity of your fate, or scream into the void, knowing it will echo back not with rescue, but with confirmation? This is where the terror lives, in the possibility that you are already living your eternity, that there is no after, no beyond, only the present, repeated forever. There is no one else to blame, no otherness to flee. It is your being and your becoming, over and over. In an eternal recurrence, you are confronted with who you really are. Now, some people might hear this and think, what a relief. No hell, no heaven, no accountability. We get to live however we want, and whatever happens, happens again and again anyway. So why bother trying? This is the so-called nihilistic conclusion, which Nietzsche himself diagnosed and dismissed. But it's worth addressing because it touches on a very real fear. Are we to simply shrug at the face of eternity? To embrace the eternal return as a reason to live carelessly? Not at all. Because if there is no God to punish you, no devil to tempt you, and no ultimate judgment to fear, then you are entirely on your own. And when you realize that, two things happen. Either you break and succumb to the chaos of absolute freedom, or you realize that the only thing standing between you and your own damnation is your own behavior. You become your own judge and jury. You become your own executioner. This is the burden of self-mastery Nietzsche demanded. It is the kind of discipline that only the eternal return can demand. Let me put it another way. Imagine that every choice you make is recorded. Every act of kindness, every unkind word, every fleeting moment of connection, every selfish thought, every honest smile, every betrayal, everything. Now imagine that this record is played back to you, not once, not twice, but an endless number of times. How would you feel about that? Would you revel in the beauty of your better moments, or cringe at the ugliness of your worst ones? Would you find comfort in the predictability of it all, or despair at the repetition of your mistakes? What would it mean to live a life worthy of being lived over and over again? Not as a punishment, but as a celebration. This is where the idea of the eternal return becomes a test, a mirror, a curse. It forces us to confront not just our highest aspiration, but our deepest fears and our basest instincts. It demands that we acknowledge not just our triumphs, but also our failures, our weaknesses, our regrets, our sins of omission and commission. It compels us to recognize that the only way to transcend ourselves is through radical self-acceptance. Only by embracing who we are, not in spite of our flaws, but because of them, can we hope to become who we want to be. The eternal return is not a theological doctrine. It is a call to action. It is a summons to wake up, to pay attention, to take responsibility, to love fiercely, to create wildly, to risk everything, because every risk is also a reward, and every failure is also a lesson. In the face of the eternal return, the only thing that matters is this moment, the one you are living now. This is the only moment that you can truly influence. This is the only moment where your choices can make a difference. This is the only moment where you can affirm or deny your own existence. This is the only moment where you can say yes to your life, to the beauty of it, to the pain of it, to the absurdity of it, to the tragedy of it, to the comedy of it, to the totality of it. This is the only moment where you can decide to be your own executioner, to judge yourself by the standard of your own humanity. This is the only moment where you can choose to live a life worth living again and again and again. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you hated it, the dislike button also works. You can check out my other content by clicking the links in the description below. Thanks for watching. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another episode. Before we begin, please consider subscribing and supporting the channel. In the last episode, we started our conversation about Friedrich Nietzsche and his philosophy. We discussed some of his key ideas and touched upon the concept of the death of God. Now, we'll delve into one of Nietzsche's most misunderstood and misinterpreted ideas, the eternal return. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, I highly recommend you do so before continuing, because this topic builds on the foundations laid in the earlier episodes. Now that the seed has been planted, the thought that your life, in its exact form, might be the eternal script of your existence, what begins to unfold is not simply a philosophical reflection, but a psychological unraveling. It starts slowly, like a whisper crawling through the halls of your mind, barely audible over the noise of daily habit. But once it finds its way into your deeper layers, it begins to pulse. Beneath your thoughts, asking questions you don't want to answer, illuminating corners you tried to forget. Because if everything returns, not only your triumphs but your humiliations, not only your love but your betrayals, not only your strength but your fear, then you are no longer allowed to dismiss the small decisions, the hidden behaviors, the choices made in silence when no one was watching. In Nietzsche's Inferno, there is no outside judge. There is only you and the consequences of your own life reverberating across eternity. Think now of your most shameful moment. That thing you carry, buried under layers of distraction and justification. The memory that makes your chest tighten when it surfaces. The person you became when you weren't strong enough to be who you should have been. Now imagine living that moment again. And again. And again. With full awareness, each time, that it is coming. That it cannot be escaped. That it is you. This is the terrifying core of the eternal return. Not just repetition, but recognition. Conscious reliving. No illusions. No denial. Only truth circling like a vulture above your soul. You may ask why Nietzsche would offer such a brutal idea. Was it despair? Was it cruelty? Or was it something else? A kind of severe medicine meant to jolt the sleeping soul awake, to shock the numb mind into movement. Because Nietzsche did not believe in comforting lies. He believed in harsh truths that burn away weakness. He believed that if you were forced to live your life again, you would either collapse under the horror of your choices, or rise through fire and become something greater. You see, the eternal return is not only a curse. It is a test, a scale. A confrontation between what you are and what you could have been. It is a weapon placed in your hands, one that can either destroy you or forge you into something unbreakable. So let us try a little experiment. Close your eyes and imagine a simple day from your life. It doesn't have to be a significant day. Not the day you were born. Not the day you fell in love. Not the day you faced a major challenge. Just a regular day, maybe one like yesterday. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast, you work, you talk to people, you feel emotions, you laugh, you cry, you experience sensations, you have thoughts. Now imagine that this day is not just one day. Imagine that this is your life. Not for 1 year, not 5 years, but forever. Imagine that this particular day keeps repeating itself, exactly as it is, without change, without growth, without evolution. This is the first layer of the eternal return. At this point, it might seem absurd. Who would choose to repeat one day over and over? But Nietzsche suggests that this is not an option. He suggests that we are already doing it. We are living the eternal return right now. Every moment that you allow to slip by without intention, every second that you fill with mindless activity, every minute that you spend without purpose is a vote for this eternal recurrence. Because if you don't want your life to be a single day repeated forever, then you must choose something different. You must choose a life that excites you, challenges you, scares you, inspires you, changes you. The next layer of the eternal return is far more complex. What if you don't hate this life? What if this day is not just a day, but your life's summation? What if it contains all your joys and pains, all your achievements and mistakes, all your loves and losses, all your hopes and fears? Now you are forced to choose between two infinities, not just an infinite repetition of a single day, but an infinite repetition of your entire existence. At this point, the choice becomes more difficult. It forces you to confront the totality of who you are. It forces you to face the consequences of your actions, the ripples they created, the echoes they left behind. It forces you to accept not only the beauty you brought into the world, but also the harm you may have caused. It forces you to acknowledge not only the good things you did, but also the bad things you tolerated. It forces you to relive not only the triumphs you cherished, but also the failures you ignored. It forces you to remember not only the people you loved, but also the people you neglected. It forces you to confront not only the dreams you pursued, but also the dreams you abandoned. It forces you to face not only the goals you achieved, but also the goals you abandoned. It forces you to accept not only the knowledge you gained, but also the ignorance you held. It forces you to relive not only the experiences you embraced, but also the experiences you avoided. It forces you to confront not only the emotions you felt, but also the emotions you suppressed. It forces you to face not only the words you spoke, but also the words you kept inside. It forces you to accept not only the deeds you performed, but also the deeds you omitted. It forces you to relive not only the gifts you received, but also the gifts you rejected. It forces you to confront not only the blessings you enjoyed, but also the suffering you endured. It forces you to face not only the laughter you shared, but also the tears you cried. It forces you to accept not only the inspiration you found, but also the discouragement you encountered. It forces you to relive not only the passions you ignited, but also the apathy you witnessed. It forces you to confront not only the victories you celebrated, but also the defeats you suffered. It forces you to face not only the values you upheld, but also the corruption you observed. It forces you to accept not only the progress you made, but also the regressions you experienced. It forces you to relive not only the aspiration you cherished, but also the disappointments you faced. It forces you to confront not only the wonders you beheld, but also the ugliness you ignored. It forces you to face not only the possibilities you explored, but also the paths you abandoned. It forces you to accept not only the mysteries you pondered, but also the questions you left unanswered. It forces you to relive not only the insights you gained, but also the lessons you missed. It forces you to confront not only the wisdom you sought, but also the ignorance you encountered. It forces you to face not only the struggles you endured, but also the comforts you shunned. It forces you to accept not only the sacrifices you made, but also the conveniences you indulge in. It forces you to relive not only the challenges you overcame, but also the obstacles you surrendered to. It forces you to confront not only the risks you took, but also the safety you chose. It forces you to face not only the rewards you earned, but also the punishments you deserved. It forces you to accept not only the bonds you forged, but also the divisions you accepted. It forces you to relive not only the connections you made, but also the disconnections you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the contributions you made, but also the inactions you tolerated. It forces you to face not only the impacts you had, but also the indifferences you witnessed. It forces you to accept not only the creativity you expressed, but also the mediocrity you encountered. It forces you to relive not only the innovations you introduced, but also the traditions you clung to. It forces you to confront not only the changes you embraced, but also the resistances you yielded to. It forces you to face not only the discoveries you made, but also the mysteries you overlooked. It forces you to accept not only the insights you gained, but also the blind spots you ignored. It forces you to relive not only the growth you experienced, but also the stagnation you succumbed to. It forces you to confront not only the self-awareness you achieved, but also the unconscious biases you held. It forces you to face not only the self-acceptance you cultivated, but also the self-rejection you harbored. It forces you to accept not only the self-love you developed, but also the self-hatred you concealed. It forces you to relive not only the authenticity you expressed, but also the inauthenticity you conformed to. It forces you to confront not only the aliveness you embraced, but also the numbness you ignored. It forces you to face not only the vitality you cultivated, but also the lethargy you succumbed to. It forces you to accept not only the passion you pursued, but also the apathy you tolerated. It forces you to relive not only the meaning you created, but also the meaninglessness you encountered. It forces you to confront not only the purpose you discovered, but also the purposelessness you ignored. It forces you to face not only the love you gave, but also the indifference you witnessed. It forces you to accept not only the compassion you cultivated, but also the callousness you encountered. It forces you to relive not only the empathy you shared, but also the disconnection you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the generosity you offered, but also the selfishness you witnessed. It forces you to face not only the kindness you practiced, but also the cruelty you tolerated. It forces you to accept not only the forgiveness you sought, but also the grudges you harbored. It forces you to relive not only the peace you found, but also the turbulence you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the joy you experienced, but also the suffering you caused. It forces you to face not only the happiness you cultivated, but also the sadness you succumbed to. It forces you to accept not only the light you embraced, but also the darkness you yielded to. It forces you to relive not only the hope you cherished, but also the despair you encountered. It forces you to confront not only the faith you held, but also the doubt you ignored. It forces you to face not only the inspiration you drew, but also the discouragement you witnessed. It forces you to accept not only the imagination you nurtured, but also the dullness you tolerated. It forces you to relive not only the creativity you expressed, but also the banality you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the curiosity you followed, but also the apathy you yielded to. It forces you to face not only the wonder you experienced, but also the indifference you succumbed to. It forces you to accept not only the beauty you appreciated, but also the ugliness you tolerated. It forces you to relive not only the truth you sought, but also the lies you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the courage you demonstrated, but also the fear you yielded to. It forces you to face not only the justice you upheld, but also the injustice you witnessed. It forces you to accept not only the freedom you cherished, but also the constraints you tolerated. It forces you to relive not only the love you gave, but also the hatred you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the gratitude you felt, but also the resentment you harbored. It forces you to face not only the respect you commanded, but also the disrespect you encountered. It forces you to accept not only the admiration you received, but also the scorn you tolerated. It forces you to relive not only the pride you took, but also the shame you ignored. It forces you to confront not only the motivation you pursued, but also the demotivation you yielded. Welcome to the channel. It's a place where we try to think deeply about things that matter, and what matters more than life itself. If you like our work and you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. There is a story that goes back to ancient Greece. A young man named Heracles, son of Zeus, is going to visit the Oracle of Delphi, supposedly the most powerful seer in the world. His father gives him instructions. Make sure you bring me back the girdle of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. It'll be a hard task, but don't worry, my son, I am with you. On the journey, Heracles encounters a giant with 6 heads and breath of fire. Panic floods his body. His hands tremble. He feels completely helpless. Then he remembers his father's words. Be brave, I am with you. He pulls back his bow and shoots an arrow right between the monster's eyes. The monster falls to the ground, stunned. Heracles approaches, raises his sword and cuts off one of his heads. Immediately 2 new heads grew back in its place. The hero recoils in terror. What is this madness? The monster roars and breathes a blast of fire. Heracles runs for his life. He stumbles over a nearby stone and falls. As the flames approach, he looks up to the sky and cries out, "My father, help me, I'm dying." And a voice booms back, "Did you forget your destiny? Have you forgotten your greatness?" And Hercules remembers his oath. When he made himself a hero, he swore never to flee from danger, no matter how great. Right now, he is running for his life, but he must stand and fight. Gathering all his remaining strength, he stands up, shakes off the smoke and dust and turns to face the Lernaean Hydra. He fights until he drives the last head into the ground. The beast collapses. Breathing heavily, Hercules cuts off one of the heads and puts it inside a sack. He goes to the Oracle of Delphi, receives his reward and returns home. At least that's one version of the story. The Oracle of Delphi spoke to many people, and one of her messages was to know yourself. So today let's reflect on the riddle. Who are you? You're watching this video, which means you're conscious, you're alive, and that in itself is enough to make you extraordinary. There are almost 8 billion people in the world today, and each one of them is a universe unto themselves. Your thoughts, feelings, memories, hopes and dreams. All of these make you who you are. And yet something is missing. For thousands of years, philosophers have wrestled with this question of identity. They've asked what makes you you. What separates you from the sum total of your experiences? Is there an essence within you that makes you into a person, a soul, a self? For some, this self is real and unchanging. It is a spiritual core that animates your physical form and gives you meaning and value. For others, there is no such self, only a stream of thoughts and sensations. We call this person X, and at any given moment, X is thinking Y. But there is no continuous thread connecting those thoughts, no X that thinks anything at all. Some say your identity is built from the inside out. Others say it is imposed upon you from without. Either way, the question remains difficult to answer. We know ourselves, and yet we also do not. We recognize ourselves as individuals, yet feel alienated from our thoughts, emotions, and impulses. This is the human condition. But what if there was a way to overcome this contradiction? What if there was a way to see yourself as a whole? Enter Friedrich Nietzsche. Born in 1844 in Germany, he was a philosopher whose work has been both highly influential and deeply controversial. In this video, we're going to ignore most of the controversy and focus on one of his most intriguing ideas, the eternal return. Here's how it goes. Imagine that you are standing at the edge of a vast canyon. Before you stretches the path of your life, and at the bottom of the canyon, you see the end of that path. Now imagine that you could relive your entire life again. Not once, but forever. You would travel that same path over and over again, reliving every moment exactly as it happened before, including the joy and the sorrow, the triumph and the defeat, the love and the loss. You would relive every word you ever spoke and every deed you ever did, because time would begin again from the beginning and loop round to infinity. This is the eternal return. Now here's the catch. You do not get to change anything. You cannot alter a single thing about your life. You must relive every decision you've ever made, every risk you took, every mistake you committed. The good and the bad, the light and the dark, all of it repeated endlessly, forever. There is no escape. There is no hope for anything different. This is not a game, nor is it a fantasy. It is a test of your inner architecture. It measures the strength of your soul, the clarity of your desire, the depth of your self-respect. Because this idea, the eternal return, is not just a philosophical exercise. It is a confrontation with your deepest fears and aspiration. It forces you to look at your life honestly and without illusions. Think about it. What would you say to your younger self, knowing that everything you say will be repeated over you again throughout eternity? Would you affirm your choices, your actions, your very essence? Or would you recoil in horror from the thought of reliving the same life again and again? This is the fundamental question Nietzsche poses to us. Do you love your life enough to embrace its eternal recurrence? Do you have faith in yourself to face your past, present, and future with courage and dignity? Or are you so ashamed, so terrified, so disgusted with yourself that the thought of infinite repetition fills you with dread and despair? Because Nietzsche realized that most people would respond no. They would not say yes to their life. They would not say yes to themselves. And thus, they would condemn themselves to a kind of hell, not in the afterlife, but right here, right now. He wrote, "He who could deny eternal recurrence is thereby refuted." But what exactly does it mean to say yes to your life? Does it mean complacency? Satisfaction with the status quo? No, not at all. In fact, Nietzsche demanded the opposite. He wanted us to affirm our lives with a radical honesty, with an unflinching awareness of our strengths and weaknesses. Only then can we begin to transform ourselves and our world. Nietzsche wasn't afraid to show us the harsh reality of our existence, but he also didn't abandon us in that darkness. He showed us a way out. He offered us a vision of something more, something beyond the confines of our own making, a glimpse of the Übermensch. This term is often misunderstood as referring to some kind of master race or Übermensch, but that's not what Nietzsche meant. He used the term Übermensch to refer to anyone who has the courage to affirm and embody the eternal recurrence, who faces the abyss of their own being and steps forward anyway. This is not about perfection, but about power. It's not about being better than others, but about being better than you were yesterday. It's not about domination, but about liberation. The Übermensch is not a tyrant, but a servant of truth, a servant of beauty, a servant of life. Nietzsche's thought is like a hammer that breaks the idols of our comfort and complacency, but it's also like a torch that lights the way toward a new kind of human being, a human being who doesn't shy away from the darkness, but embraces it and transforms it into light. But don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Embrace the eternal return. Imagine your life as a whole, as a single moment that stretches from beginning to end. Look at it with honesty, with love, with gratitude. Accept it, affirm it, live it fully. Then, and only then, will you begin to understand the depth and richness of Nietzsche's thought. You will see that the eternal return is not a curse, but a blessing. It is not a punishment, but a gift. It is not death, but life. Because, as Nietzsche said, only that which has the strength to endure and to bear its burden beautifully is beautiful. Thank you for watching. Nietzsche's Übermensch, beyond good and evil, and now we arrive at the threshold, not of a conclusion, for there are none in Nietzsche's vision, but of a confrontation so absolute, so unrelenting, that the very idea of ending becomes irrelevant, because the eternal return has no ending. That is its essence. There is no climax, no resolution, no final breath where the music swells and the curtain falls. There is only the cycle, the return, the recurrence, over and over, forever. But perhaps now, after walking through the shadow of this thought, you have begun to feel something shift. Not comfort, not peace, but power. The kind of power that comes not from escape, but from facing the unbearable and refusing to look away. That power is not loud. It does not announce itself with triumph or conquest. It is silent. It grows in stillness, in responsibility, in the decision to live as if every moment matters, because it does. If your life must repeat, then your life must be worthy of repetition. And that is the question that begins to bloom in the ashes. Not, will this happen? But, am I ready to live as if it already is? We often seek solace in narratives, in stories that explain that comfort, that promise resolution. We yearn for an ending to the story of our lives. But Nietzsche, the eternal rebel, refuses to provide such closure. He holds up the mirror of the eternal return and asks, what do you see, not in a moment of clarity, but in the darkest depths of despair, when the masks are gone and only our raw being remains? What then? Does fear grip you? Does despair tighten its icy fingers round your heart? Or does a strange calm wash over you? Do you meet the abyss of eternity and find, paradoxically, a new sense of freedom? Because here is the crux of Nietzsche's message. The confrontation with the eternal return strips away illusion. It lays bare the fundamental questions. Are you living unconsciously, driven by habits, expectations, and the weight of an unexamined past? Or are you awake? Are you aware of the burden and the beauty of the single precious moment that you are in right now? And most importantly, are you ready to affirm it? To affirm not just the light, but also the shadow, the joy and the suffering, the triumphs and the regrets. For it is in the totality, in the acceptance of the whole, that Nietzsche finds his path to what he calls amor fati, a love of fate, a fierce embrace of what is. He writes, my formula for human greatness is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not in the future, not in the past, not for all eternity, not only to endure what is necessary, still less to conceal it all. Idealism is falseness in the face of necessity. But to love it, to love it. How profound is this call, this summons to wakefulness, to presence, to an active and conscious engagement with the reality of our existence. Nietzsche is not offering us a map to happiness. He is offering us a challenge to confront the totality of our being, to acknowledge the dark and the light, and to choose life in all its rawness and authenticity. He is reminding us that eternity is not a distant realm, but a reflection of the present moment. Each now is eternal in its significance. Each choice, each action, each thought ripples into infinity. We often shy away from this awareness, seeking refuge in the finite, in the limited scope of a day, a week, a year. But in doing so, don't we diminish the very richness, the very depth of our experience? Don't we cheat ourselves of the fullness of life by refusing to engage with the vastness of existence? To confront the eternal return is to awaken to the preciousness of the individual, the unique, the irreplaceable. It is to recognize that each moment, each heartbeat is a victory over the abyss. It is a celebration of existence in the face of nothingness. It is a defiant, I am here. I am alive. When we speak of eternal recurrence, we cannot ignore the echoes of Christian eschatology. The concept of heaven and hell, of judgment, of damnation or salvation. These are potent images that have shaped our cultural landscape. But Nietzsche, in his radical reimagining, subverts these traditional notions. He turns the tables on the God of comfort and challenges us to confront the harsh realities of existence without the crutch of divine intervention. He doesn't offer us a heaven to escape to, nor does he provide a hell that we might fear. Instead, he points to the hell that exists within the confines of our own hearts, the hell of regret, of remorse, of the life we refuse to live fully. He writes, the greatest punishment that could befall us would be the repetition of a single instant, a single hour, a single day, the repetition of a meaningless action. This is hell, not as eternal torment, but as the negation of growth, of evolution, of becoming. The hellish scenario isn't about fire and brimstone, but about the stagnation of the soul, the atrophy of the spirit. This challenges us to examine the quality of our actions, the meaning we imbue into our experiences. Does every moment, every heartbeat resonate with purpose, with intention, with love? Or do we find ourselves caught in a loop of meaningless actions, driven by habit, by societal norms, or worse, by the tyranny of our own subconscious? In this context, heaven becomes an internal state, a clarity of vision, a harmony of being. It is not a place to which we ascend, but a realization that dawns within. It is the quiet confidence of one who has looked into the abyss and returned, bearing witness to the darkness and emerging with a deeper appreciation for the light. In the depths of this confrontation, Nietzsche finds the seeds of transformation. He speaks of the Übermensch, the overman, not as a literal superhuman, but as a figurative ideal, a representation of the potential that lies dormant within each of us. This Übermensch is not born, but becomes. It is forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by the challenges of existence. It is the one who, upon hearing the call of the eternal return, does not break, but rises. It is the one who accepts the totality of life, the good and the bad, and affirms it all with a fierce love. To be an Übermensch is to be proactive, not passive. It is to cease being a debtor to life and to begin being a creditor. It is to take responsibility not only for our actions, but for our essence, for our very being. It is to become the author of our own story, to write our own meaning into existence. Nietzsche challenges us to leave behind the comforting illusions, the crutches of complacency that we often rely on to navigate life. He calls for a revolution of the spirit, a transformation of consciousness. He urges us to reject the herd mentality, the pressure to conform, to embrace our individuality, our uniqueness, our singularity. He encourages us to cast off the shackles of guilt, of shame, and to replace them with self-acceptance, with self-love. He writes, "He who has overcome his faith can live in the present. He has done what was necessary. He has won the right to be free, to want nothing to be different, to want nothing to be different." Ah, what a radical notion! To accept the tapestry of existence, woven as it is with threads of joy and sorrow, of triumph and tragedy, of love and loss. To affirm life in its entirety is to discover a profound freedom, a liberation from the shackles of desire and aversion. It is to recognize that the very fabric of existence is sacred. Each thread, no matter how dark or how light, contributes to the richness, the depth, the meaningfulness of our lives. Confronting the eternal return forces us to reckon with the totality of our being. It compels us to integrate the shadow, the parts of ourselves we might deem unacceptable, the memories we might wish to forget, the mistakes we might want to erase. It calls for a wholeness, a completeness that embraces the full spectrum of human experience. It is in this acceptance, in this integration, that we discover the path to healing, to self-understanding, to genuine connection with others. And in the end, what are we left with? Not an easy answer, not a comforting solution, but a challenge, a call to action. Nietzsche does not offer us a blueprint, but a set of tools, concepts, ideas that can serve as guideposts on our own unique journeys. Ultimately, it is up to us to confront the abyss, to look into the face of eternity and to decide, to choose to embrace the totality of life, to affirm the eternal return. For in doing so, we discover the highest form of love, not a love of God, not a love of others, but a love of our fate, a love of our life, in all its beauty and its pain, its joy and its sorrow, its triumph and its tragedy. This is the summit that Nietzsche points to, not with certainty, but with possibility. It is the dawning of a new understanding, a new way of being in the world. It is the birth of the Übermensch, the overman, the one who has overcome.